Get out of the car. Keep your hands where I can see them right now. Walk backwards, slowly towards my voice.
I'm not resisting, you're hurting me!
I need you to stay right here.
Blue and red light flooded the Atlanta night as Alicia Monroe's cheek slammed against the hood of her own Prius. And while the cop laughed at the idea that this Uber driver could be a federal civil rights attorney, half the neighborhood silently hit record on their phones. The blue Prius hummed softly as it rolled down Ponce de Leon Avenue, its dash lit by a tired glow of pop-up notifications and streetlight reflections. Atlanta's Saturday night had thinned from chaos to a restless hum, bars emptying, kitchen staff clocking out, gig workers chasing their last rides before dawn. Alicia Monroe flexed her fingers on the steering wheel, working stiffness from knuckles that had spent all week around pens and legal pads, not around leather and plastic. The Uber app chimed. One more ride. Just one more, she told herself, watching the map redraw a route through Midtown. From the outside, she looked like any other overworked professional doing gig work to pad a salary. Simple jeans, gray hoodie, her hair pulled back. No jewelry except a slim band on her finger and a cheap fitness tracker. In the cup holder, a cardboard sleeve around lukewarm coffee. On the back seat, a faded tote bag with a sweater and a spare phone charger. Only the passenger side floorboard betrayed anything different. A scuffed navy blue laptop bag with a discreet seal stitched near the handle. Most people's eyes slid right past it, reading it as some corporate logo. It wasn't. The seal belonged to the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. The app's navigation rerouted for the third time, circling her through the same cluster of blocks. Construction cones glowed orange on one corner, a closed gas station squatted on another. Above them, apartment balconies hung like open boxes, shapes framed in the light of TVs and phones. Nice, Alicia muttered. Lab rats in the maze again. The passenger slid into the back seat 2 minutes later, smelling like fry oil and cheap cologne. Evening, he said, buckling up. Sorry, they got all the roads messed up around here. Cops been thick tonight. Alicia glanced at him in the rear view. Thick how? Stopping folks for nothing. You know. He shrugged. Say we circling the block, ask about drugs, weapons, all that. My cousin already got pulled over once tonight. They let him go, but you can tell they hunting. The word landed heavy. Hunting. I'll get you home, she said softly. We'll stay boring. She followed the app's line, looping once, twice around a couple of blocks as the GPS tried to outsmart closed roads and traffic. Each loop, she saw the same patrol car nosed at the corner, lights off, but silhouette unmistakable. On the third pass, the cruiser eased out from the shadows. Here we go, the passenger sighed. Blue lights exploded behind her, washing the inside of the Prius in strobing color. Alicia eased the car to the curb, shifted into park, and placed both hands on the top of the steering wheel, fingers spread wide. Her heart sped up, not from surprise, but from something colder and more familiar. She'd read 1,000 reports. Now she was in one. Just stay quiet back there, she said to the passenger. Hands where they can see. He did exactly that, palms up, eyes wide. The officer approached from the driver's side, flashlight beam slicing through the window. He was mid-30s, jaw clenched in the way of a man used to being obeyed. Name tag Doyle, badge gleaming. Evening, sir, Alicia said, voice steady. He frowned. License and registration, and keep your hands where I can see them. They're on the wheel, she said calmly. My license is in my wallet in my right jacket pocket. Registration's in the glove compartment. This is a ride share. Did I ask for a speech? His flashlight stayed in her face, too bright. I said license and registration. You've been circling this block for 10 minutes, stopping in front of buildings you don't seem to know. That's suspicious. My GPS kept rerouting because of the closures. She nodded toward the phone mounted on the dash, Uber app glowing. I'm driving Uber, officer. The beam dipped just long enough for her to read his tag clearly. Officer Doyle. He straightened, as if the sound of his name out of her mouth was an affront. Step out of the vehicle. Alicia blinked. Sir, I can hand you my license where I'm seated. There's a passenger in the back who... I gave you a lawful order, Doyle snapped, voice rising just enough for nearby balconies to hear. Step out of the vehicle, now. In the rear view, the passenger whispered, Yo, what the... Alicia's jaw tightened. She'd trained witnesses to stay quiet, to survive the moment so they could fight later. Now she became her own witness. "Okay," she said. "I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt and open the door with my left hand. My right hand will stay visible." "Fine. Slow." She moved as she'd advised countless clients, deliberate, announcing each motion, refusing to give anyone a reason to shout, "Sudden movement." The cold air hit her face as she stepped onto the curb, the cruiser's lights painting the asphalt in spinning blue and red. "Turn around, hands on the hood," Doyle said. His partner, a younger officer with an Asian face and wary eyes, Chen, hung back near the Prius's rear bumper, hand hovering near his belt. "Officer," Alicia began, "I can answer any—" Doyle grabbed her elbow and turned her toward the Prius, pressing her palms down on the hood hard enough that the old engine's warmth seeped into her skin. "Here's how this works," he said, voice pitched loud for the apartment balconies, for the phones she could see raised in the corners of her vision. "You circle a block in a high-crime area late at night, we stop you. You don't get to narrate, you don't get to debate. You comply." Alicia swallowed humiliation like broken glass. The passenger in the back craned his neck, eyes huge, phone in his hand. "Please keep recording," she called over her shoulder, just loud enough for the nearest balconies to hear. "Whatever happens, document everything," Doyle snorted. "That a threat, ma'am? Document everything?" He patted down her sides brusquely, finding nothing but keys and a chapstick. "People with nothing to hide don't talk like lawyers." If you only knew, she thought. Across the street, someone shouted, "Hey, she's just driving Uber." Another voice, "Why you got her like that? She ain't do nothing." Chen shifted his weight, scanning the growing circle of phones aimed their way. He hesitated, then stepped closer. "Sarge is going to want crowd control," he murmured. Doyle didn't look at him. "Then call it in. Suspicious vehicle, possible drug activity, growing crowd. You remember the script?" Chen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he keyed his radio. Alicia caught the slight tremor in his voice when he said the words, "growing crowd." "Officer Doyle," she said, hands still on the hood. "My name is Alicia Monroe. I'm on a rideshare shift. My phone and ID are in the car, and I would like to—" "You'd like a lot of things," he said. "Here's what I'd like. To know why a woman in a $5,000 suit is running rideshare in a car that doesn't match the plate history I'm looking at." She froze. "What?" He jerked his chin at the Prius. "This plate's registered to an older address with no Uber account on record. You picked the car up from somebody? Boyfriend? Client?" The DMV database, she realized. The update from her move the week before hadn't hit every system yet. The car was legal. The paperwork in the glove box proved it. But to him, it was an opportunity. "Officer, the registration is current," she said. "If you check, we'll see when we search it." He stepped back, calling toward the car. "Passenger, step out, hands visible. We're going to have a look at this vehicle." "Search?" Alicia's voice sharpened despite herself. "On what basis? Driving in circles and having a passenger in a rideshare car is not probable cause." Phones shifted, zooming in. The word search had electric power in 2025. People had seen enough videos to know what came next. "Look at that bag," Doyle said, pointing his flashlight into the front seat. "Unmarked backpack, laptop bag, night run. This is a target vehicle all day." "That bag," Alicia said evenly, "contains privileged work product protected under federal law. It isn't subject to random—" "You're in Atlanta," he cut in. "My city, my rules tonight." The wrong sentence, she thought. So very, very wrong. A tow truck's yellow flashers joined the symphony of blue and red as it turned onto the block. Someone on a balcony yelled, "Man, they really towing our car?" "For what?" Chen's eyes flicked from the laptop bag to Alicia's face. Their gazes met for half a second. She saw something there. Uncertainty, a memory of training sliding up against the reality of the street. He looked away. "Unit 231 requesting supervisor," Doyle said into his radio. "Possible vehicle seizure, passenger release." "Copy, 231. Sergeant Larkin en route," came the answer. "Congratulations," Doyle muttered. "You just earned yourself an audience." Alicia breathed slowly through her nose, forcing her shoulders down. Every instinct she had, every trained response from years of litigation wanted to erupt, to recite constitutional provisions, to warn him about what he was doing. Instead, she repeated 3 words in her head like a mantra. Document. Remember. Later. Behind her, the tow truck driver hopped down from his cab, glancing between the officers and the cluster of neighbors filming. "You sure about this one?" he asked quietly. "Just do your job," Doyle snapped. 15 minutes later, Alicia sat in the back of a patrol car, hands cuffed in front of her to the transport chain, watching her Prius, her little blue bubble of anonymity, roll away on the tow truck. The Navy DOJ bag sat on Doyle's lap in the front seat, his fingers tapping on the zipper. "You really shouldn't open that," she said. He smirked at the rearview mirror. "People with nothing to hide don't care who opens their bag." Through the glass barrier, she could see the neighborhood receding. Phones still held high until the cruiser turned the corner and the scene vanished. She took a breath and began silently listing everything she'd seen. Badge numbers, times on the cruiser's dash, street signs, faces in windows, the way Chen had looked at her, the exact words Doyle had used. Every case file she'd ever read told her the same thing. Stories got twisted, memories blurred, reports hardened, bias into facts. The only defense was detail. "Ma'am," Chen said quietly from the passenger seat, breaking the hum of the engine, "if you cooperate, this will go a lot faster." Alicia met his eyes through the reflective barrier. His expression was careful, but his voice had the same tremor as on the sidewalk. "I'm cooperating," she said, "and I'm listening very carefully to how this department defines fast." The precinct's fluorescent lights had a way of flattening everything, faces, colors, emotions, into the same tired gray. Alicia stepped out of the patrol car into that gray, the chain between her wrists clinking softly. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant, and too many nights like this. Sergeant Tom Larkin met them at the Sally Port door, clipboard in hand. His hair had gone mostly gray at the temples, lines etched deep around his mouth. He looked first at Alicia, then at the bag in Doyle's hand. "What have we got?" Larkin asked. "Suspicious vehicle," Doyle said. "Ride-share cover story, inconsistent registration, circling a known problem block, possible narcotics courier, maybe stolen property. Driver refused consent to search, got mouthy about her rights." Mouthy. Alicia filed the word away. Larkin's gaze lingered on her a beat longer this time. She held it, letting him see everything. Tired eyes, scraped wrists, the faint outline of a professional blouse under her hoodie. "You run her info?" he asked. Yeah. Clean record, local address. Doesn't match the plate history exactly, but..." "Then you got cause for arrest?" Larkin's tone sharpened. "Obstruction," Doyle said smoothly. "Interfering with an investigation, refusing lawful commands, escalating the crowd. We can hold, process, sort it on paper." Larkin's eyes flicked to the navy blue bag. The seal caught the light just enough for him to see the eagle and scales. "Where'd that come from?" he asked. "Front seat," Doyle said. "Wheel inventory. Might be stolen electronics, might be fake creds. You'd be amazed what folks print these days. Say for a flicker of a second, something like recognition crossed Larkin's face. But then it was gone. "Follow procedure," he said, handwriting his signature on the intake line. "Document everything by the book. IA's breathing down everybody's neck with DOJ sniffing around. Last thing I need is a sloppy report." He didn't look at Alicia when he said DOJ. She was almost certain he meant to. Booking took on that surreal, slow-motion quality she'd seen in body cam footage but never felt in her own muscles. Her necklace, her watch, her phone, her keys, all slipped into a plastic tray, each item becoming an entry in a property log instead of a piece of her life. When the officer at the fingerprint station inked her fingers, he hummed under his breath, not looking at her face. On the wall behind him, a framed poster outlined bias-free policing policy in bland corporate font. She read every line. Back in a tiny corridor, a female officer patted her down again, more gently than Doyle had. "Turn around, open your mouth, lift your tongue," she recited. "Shake out your hair. Okay, you're good." "Good is doing a lot of work in that sentence," Alicia murmured. The officer's eyes flicked up, searching her face. "You a lawyer or something?" "Something like that." They put her in a holding cell with a bench welded to the wall, a stainless steel toilet in the corner, and a door made of thick, scratched plexiglass. The din of the precinct, the phones, the radios, the muffled arguments, filtered in like static. Alicia sat, letting the cold seep through the denim into her bones. She'd read about people falling apart in these cells. The panic, the claustrophobia, the humiliation. For a moment, a wave of it rose in her throat. She forced herself to breathe. "This is data," she told herself. "This is evidence. You weren't supposed to be a data point, but here you are. Use it." She thought of the spreadsheets she'd been poring over for weeks. Stop and frisk rates in predominantly black neighborhoods versus white ones, vehicle searches by race, complaint patterns. Atlanta Police Department had been a red flag for years. Enough red flags, and the Civil Rights Division had come calling. They had sent her. "Sometimes you need to see it up close," her supervisor had said in D.C., tapping the manila folder. "Statistics tell one story, eyes on tells another." She thought he meant ride-alongs, community meetings, quiet interviews in church basements. She hadn't expected a patrol car, a hood, and a pair of too-tight cuffs. A loud snore snapped her attention to the other end of the bench. A woman in a stained hoodie was slumped there, eyes closed, the sour smell of alcohol hanging around her. "You good?" Alicia asked quietly. The woman cracked one eye. "Good as anybody in a cage," she rasped. "What they get you for?" "Driving my own car," Alicia said, "and having an opinion, apparently." The woman snorted. "Yeah, that's a felony now." Alicia smiled despite herself. "What about you?" "Public drunkenness," the woman said. "Yelled at the wrong cop outside the wrong bar. I'll be out when they're bored of me." She closed her eye again. Conversation over. Time stretched. Alicia's internal clock, usually so sharp in court, started to fray under the flicker of the fluorescent lights. Every sound became a marker, a radio squawk, a door buzzer, a distant shout. She tried to estimate how long they'd keep her. Legally, they could hold for hours before charging or releasing. Realistically, the caseload, the need to clear cells, the fact that she'd given them nothing but a clean record and a car they'd already seized, they were likely to let her go with some vague, pending review language. In the meantime, the meeting on her calendar ticked closer. 9 a.m., Atlanta PD Pattern and Practice Briefing. She imagined the other DOJ attorneys gathering in the hotel conference room, laptops open, coffee cups lined up, unaware that their lead counsel was barefoot on a cold concrete floor, counting the seconds between footsteps in a county cell. Her phone, buzzing in the property room, would be full of emails asking where she was. Finally, the door clanged open. A different officer stood there, day shift just starting, face puffy with sleep. "Monroe," he said, "let's go." They walked her to the desk where her property sat in a clear plastic bag. "You're being released," the officer said. "No formal charges filed at this time. Vehicles being held pending further investigation." "I need my car," she said, "and my bag," he shrugged. "Bag's in evidence. Car's on the lot until the report's processed. You can call the number on this form to inquire." He slid a carbon copy release form toward her. She read it carefully. Time of release, officer names, incident number. She memorized each. "Can I make a phone call?" she asked. "You're walking out the door, Mom. Use your cell." Outside, morning air slapped her awake. The city sounded different in daylight. Garbage trucks groaning, birds arguing in trees, buses wheezing. Her phone, finally back in her hand, lit up with a cascade of notifications. Emails from her team, calendar alarms, a text from her supervisor. "You land okay." Remember 9 a.m. She checked the time. 7:12 a.m., she had less than 2 hours. In the ride share back to her hotel, irony bitter enough to taste, she caught a glimpse of herself in the window. Tired eyes, hair mussed, faint red marks on her wrists. Nothing about her reflected the authority in the DOJ credentials that had been zipped inside that navy bag. At the hotel, she moved on autopilot, elevator, room, door, shower. Under the hot spray, the night finally hit her in fragments. Doyle's laugh, Chen's silence, the tow truck, the phones in the air, the feel of the hood under her palms. For a moment, her knees threatened to give, the water pounding her shoulders as her chest tightened. She pressed a palm to the tile, breathing deep until the dizziness passed. "We don't get to fall apart in the middle," she heard her father's voice say, clear as if he were standing in the bathroom with her. "We can fall apart after we've done the job." Her father had worn a different badge, public defender, than judge back in Birmingham. He'd taught her that righteous anger was fuel, not a destination. She turned off the water, wrapped herself in a towel, and walked to the mirror. In the reflection, she saw not a suspect, not a gig worker, but the woman she actually was when she wasn't playing decoy. Senior trial attorney, Civil Rights Division, Department of Justice, lead counsel on federal pattern and practice investigations into troubled departments. The woman Atlanta's command staff would be meeting in less than 2 hours. She dried her hair, chose a navy suit sharp enough to cut, and clipped her DOJ identification badge to the lapel. The same eagle and scales that had glinted on her laptop bag now sat plainly over her heart. Her wrists still hurt. She didn't cover the marks with makeup. At 8:31 a.m., Alicia stepped out of the hotel elevator into a lobby buzzing with conference attendees, tourist families, and the clatter of breakfast. Somewhere across town, a group of officers were probably in a briefing room gossiping about a mouthy Uber driver from the night before. Let them, she thought. By the time the day ended, they wouldn't be telling that story the same way. Atlanta Police Headquarters loomed over Trinity Avenue like a slab of poured concrete authority. Mirrored glass, heavy columns, the city seal jutting out from the facade. Alicia had seen a dozen buildings just like it in a dozen cities, each with its own flavor of defensiveness. Inside, the conference room reserved for the DOJ meeting had no windows, just beige walls and a long, glossy table. A projector hummed overhead, beaming a blue screen onto a pull-down surface at the far end. Chief Denise Walker stood by the coffee urn, hands wrapped around a paper cup. Her posture said discipline, her eyes said exhaustion. At the other end of the room, the city attorney, Linda Cortez, stacked legal pads with the grim efficiency of someone who knew she'd be blamed no matter what happened. Sergeant Larkin slipped in, uniform crisp, face tighter than it had been at 2 a.m. The email from the chief's office had been clear: command staff attendance mandatory. Supervisors involved in any recent high-visibility incidents strongly encouraged. High visibility, he thought. That's one way to put a video that's already got 50,000 views. He'd watched it twice before driving over. A shaky phone clip from a balcony, a woman pressed against a hood, blue lights strobing. The caption said, "Uber driver pulled for what? Manain Atlanta Mahimadi's profiling?" The comments had not been kind. He'd recognized Doyle's stance, the aggressive tilt of his shoulders, the way he pinned his authority to sheer volume. He'd recognized Chen too, standing off to the side with his uncertainty like a spotlight. He'd recognized the woman, but he couldn't place from where. A face he'd seen in passing, maybe on the local news, maybe in a training slide. It had bothered him all morning. The door opened. 3 people entered wearing DOJ lanyards. 2 associates carried laptops and thick binders. Between them walked Alicia. Her hair was neatly pulled back now, her suit immaculate, the navy badge on her lapel catching the fluorescent light. The faint red marks on her wrists were still visible. For a moment, the room didn't breathe. Chief Walker's eyes widened just a fraction before she slammed her back straight and composed her face. Larkin felt his stomach drop so hard it might have fallen through the floor. Doyle, seated halfway down the table, went gray. He'd barely made it to the meeting on time. Larkin had told him at the last second he was requested by the chief for a discussion with DOJ about patrol practices. He'd imagined an abstract conversation, PowerPoints, policy talk, a chance to sound like he knew something. He hadn't imagined this. "Good morning," Alicia said, voice filling the room with a calm authority completely different from the voice that had said Officer Doyle on the sidewalk hours before. "I'm Senior Trial Attorney Alicia Monroe with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Thank you for meeting with us today." If there was any recognition in her eyes when she glanced at Doyle, she did not show it. She looked at him the way she looked at the city attorney, the chief, the union rep, as a subject, an entity, not a ghost from last night. Larkin, who had spent 25 years reading people in interrogation rooms, felt a chill. That composure was scarier than shouting. "Before we begin," Alicia said, setting her leather folder on the table, "I need to make a disclosure." The word hit Larkin like a memory. Someone else had used it once, a judge in a case he'd testified in. It meant trouble. "Last night at approximately 1:14 a.m., I was stopped by officers from this department while driving in the Midtown area. I was detained, searched, and transported to your precinct. My vehicle and work materials were seized and remain in your custody." The room erupted in low, disbelieving murmurs. The union representative, a thick-necked man named Briggs, shot to his feet. "You're telling us you were involved in an incident with our people, and you're still sitting at this table?" he demanded. "That's a conflict of interest if I ever heard one." Alicia inclined her head. "Under DOJ protocols, any personal interaction with the subject department must be disclosed and evaluated for conflict. I've done so with my superiors. They have determined that my continued presence is appropriate for this meeting, given the systemic nature of our investigation." "That's convenient," Briggs muttered. "What happened to you was unfortunate," Chief Walker said, voice tight. "We'll review it separately, but today's agenda is the same," Alicia said gently but firmly, "because what happened last night was not separate from why we're here. It's a symptom of the patterns we've been analyzing for months." She nodded to one of her colleagues who connected a laptop to the projector. The blue screen blinked, then filled with a title: United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Pattern and Practice Review, Atlanta Police Department. "We're going to walk through some data," Alicia said. "Then we'll discuss policy, training, and potential remedial measures. At some point, we will return to last night's incident as a case study. But first, the numbers." For the next 20 minutes, the room became a classroom. Graphs and charts marched across the screen, each accompanied by a calm explanation. Black drivers are stopped at 2.7 times the rate of white drivers in majority black neighborhoods and 1.9 times the rate in majority white neighborhoods, she said, clicking to the next slide. Yet, contraband is found less often on black drivers than on white drivers in both contexts. She flipped to another chart. Use of force incidents unrelated to violent felonies. 43% involve black subjects in a city that is 38% black. When you control for crime rates, the disparity persists. Larkin watched the chief's jaw tighten with each slide. He'd sat through enough community meetings to know the numbers in the abstract. Seeing them weaponized with federal logos behind them was different. Finally, Alicia clicked to a slide labeled Qualitative Data. "Numbers tell one story," she said. "Complaints and narratives tell another." She read excerpts from citizen complaints, each with names redacted. A teacher stopped 3 times in 6 months. A nurse made to sit on a curb for 40 minutes while officers searched her car for no reason. A software engineer asked how he could afford a car like that. Most of these complaints were closed as unsubstantiated or not sustained, she said. Yet the patterns repeat. Her colleague clicked again. The next slide was a freeze frame from a grainy phone video. A woman pressed against a hood, blue lights, a man in a uniform behind her. Larkin felt his throat go dry. "This is footage from last night," Alicia said. "It's one of several angles currently circulating on social media. We'll watch 30 seconds. In the video, her own voice sounded strange to her. Smaller, edged with a strain she hadn't felt from inside her head. Doyle's voice, by contrast, seemed louder, echoing off the walls. "You circle a block in a high-crime area late at night. We stop you. You don't get to narrate. You don't get to debate. You comply." Phones visible on balconies, a muttered, "She ain't do nothing." The glint of the navy bag through the Prius window. The clip ended. Silence fell. "I'm not showing this for sympathy," Alicia said. "I'm showing it because it is textbook pattern. Pretextual stop, subjective interpretation of suspicious behavior, immediate escalation, disregard for offered documentation." Doyle shifted in his chair. "With respect, you're taking that out of context," he said. "We had intel on that block. We've had shootings, drug activity." "Officer Doyle," Alicia said, turning toward him for the first time fully. "You are—" He straightened. "Officer Kevin Doyle, Patrol." "I see." She folded her hands. "I am very interested in your context. We'll get to it." She turned back to the room. "Before we dig into last night, I want to talk about policy. Sergeant Larkin, could you walk us through your current guidelines for vehicle stops and searches?" Larkin swallowed. train officers to articulate reasonable suspicion based on specific behaviors, not just location or demographics, he said. We discourage so-called fishing expeditions. Consent searches are documented, body cams on, etc. Discourage, Alicia repeated. Is there a written directive for that? It's in the manual, he said too quickly. We've reviewed your manual, she said. The language is flexible. Briggs bristled. You trying to write our policies for us now? We're trying to ensure your policies comply with the Constitution, Alicia said, not bothering to soften it. You're free to decide whether that matters to you. Her colleague slid a folder across the table. These are excerpts from federal case law relevant to vehicle stops, he said. You'll recognize some names. Chief Walker pinched the bridge of her nose. Let's refocus, she said. You said you wanted Officer Doyle's context. Let's hear it. Doyle chewed the inside of his cheek, feeling every eye in the room on him. With all due respect, he began, I did what we've been told to do. That block has been a hot spot. We've had robberies, we've had shootings, we've had stolen cars dumped there. When you see a driver circling multiple times, stopping in front of buildings they don't seem to know, that's suspicious. Rideshare is the oldest cover in the book. Did you confirm it was a rideshare? Alicia asked. The phone mounted on the dash, the app on the screen, the passenger in the back seat with the fare displayed. Apps can be faked, he said. We've seen that. Did the driver present a valid license? Yes. Registration? Yes, but the system showed a discrepancy on the address. Did you read the name on the registration? He hesitated. Not in detail. We can sort that at the station. Did you allow the driver to reach for judicial or DOJ identification when she stated that she worked in the legal field? I've heard that line 100 times, he said. My son, my cousin's a lawyer, my uncle's a judge. People say all kinds of things. So you made a categorical decision, Alicia said, that certain claims, those involving legal authority, are presumptively false when spoken by certain people in certain neighborhoods. That's not what I... Officer, Chief Walker cut in, low, warning. Choose your words carefully. Doyle's jaw tightened. I treated a suspicious situation like a suspicious situation, he said. That's my job. Alicia nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty, she said. I don't doubt that you believe you were doing your job. That is what makes this so dangerous. She turned to Jason Chen. Officer Chen, you were also present, she said. Is that correct? He startled slightly. Yes, ma'am. Did you have your body camera activated? Yes. Is there full footage of the stop from your vantage point? Yes. Has that footage been reviewed yet by your supervisors? All eyes swung to Larkin. We haven't had time to conduct a formal review, he said. It's been, 8 hours? Yet time was found to tow a vehicle and log a bag into evidence, Alicia said softly. Priority is a choice. She looked back at Chen. Officer, without speculating on anyone's intent, can you tell me whether you observed any behavior from me? She caught herself, shifted. From the driver that suggested a threat to officer safety. Chen swallowed. The union rep's gaze burned into the side of his face. He thought of his student loan statements, his probationary status, his father's accented voice telling him to be the officer people needed. No, ma'am, he said finally. She did exactly what we train people to do. Hands visible, clear movements, she was calm. It was the crowd that started to get edgy. And why was the crowd getting edgy? Alicia asked. He looked at Doyle, then at the chief, then back at her. Because they didn't understand why she was being treated like a criminal, he said. And I wasn't sure I did either. Briggs exploded. You don't get to second-guess your training in front of outsiders, he snapped. You're hanging your fellow officer out to dry. Enough, Chief Walker said sharply. We're not going to eat our own in front of the DOJ. Alicia watched the dynamics like a chessboard. Loyalty, fear, cracks. This isn't about eating your own, she said. It's about deciding what kind of department you want to be. One that closes ranks no matter what, or one that can admit when something is broken. She clicked to the next slide. On the screen appeared a draft header, United States versus City of Atlanta, proposed consent decree. Let's talk about remedies. On the projected page, dense paragraphs of legal language lined up like soldiers. Provisions, deadlines, enforcement mechanisms. Consent decrees aren't punishments, Alicia said. They're roadmaps. You have an opportunity to help write your own. Briggs scoffed. With a gun to our head, with the Constitution at your back, she corrected. You can comply voluntarily or we can litigate. That's the choice every department gets. Chief Walker leaned forward, eyes on the document. What are you proposing? She asked. Alicia pointed with a pen. First, data transparency, monthly public reports on traffic stops, searches, and arrests broken down by race, gender, location, and officer. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to fear. Briggs muttered something about trial by Twitter. Alicia ignored him. Second, an independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power, she continued. Not a rubber stamp, not an advisory committee you can ignore, real authority to investigate complaints and recommend discipline. Larkin winced. Our officers already feel like everyone's watching them, he said. Adding more eyes. Protects the good ones, Alicia said. Right now, people assume the worst because they can't see the process. Transparency is how you prove you're better than your worst actors. She moved down the page. Third, revised stop and search policies with tightened definitions of suspicious behavior. Circling a block, existing in a neighborhood, having an expensive car, none of those will qualify without more. You'll need articulable facts, and you'll need to write them down. Fourth, training, she said. Not a 1-hour PowerPoint on implicit bias, real ongoing instruction co-developed with community groups and civil rights experts. Scenario-based, evaluated, integrated into promotion decisions. She paused. And finally, accountability. Discipline that means something. Patterns like Officer Doyle's? She nodded toward him without looking directly at him. Must trigger automatic review, not quiet file closures. The room buzzed with quiet resistance, fear, calculation. Chief Walker looked from the document to Alicia. And if we refuse, then the Civil Rights Division will file suit in federal court, Alicia said. We'll seek a judicial order imposing similar terms, likely with less input from you. The process will be adversarial, expensive, and very public. Walker exhaled slowly. You don't leave a lot of middle ground. Middle ground is what created last night, Alicia said. Half measures, good intentions, no follow-through. The middle is where people like me end up on hoods. There was no anger in her voice now, only weariness honed into steel. Silence reigned for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, Jason Chen spoke. Chief, he said quietly, I know I'm the youngest one in this room. I know I haven't seen what you've seen. But I was there last night. I watched it happen. I didn't stop it. I wish I had. All eyes turned to him. I want to do this job, he went on. I want to keep people safe. But I don't want to be part of a department where stopping someone like Ms. Monroe, he caught himself. Ms. Monroe, someone like her is normal. These changes, they'd protect us too, from ourselves, from bad habits, from the stuff we tell ourselves is just the job. Briggs looked ready to explode, but Chief Walker lifted a hand. Officer Chen, she said, are you prepared for what your colleagues will say about you after this? He swallowed. I'm more worried about what my father would say if I didn't. Walker's mouth twitched just slightly. Your father? A cop? Immigrant, Chen said. Came here believing cops were supposed to protect him. It took a while for him to stop crossing the street when he saw a patrol car. I told him joining up would help change that. Walker sat back, eyes clouded. My father crossed the street for different reasons, she said. He was a black man in this city in the 70s. The admission hung in the air, softening some edge no policy language could reach. She looked at Alicia. I'm not promising to sign everything today, she said, but I'm not slamming the door either. We'll need council approval, union input, budget wrangling. If you want real reform, you'll have to accept that it's a process, not a press release. I know, Alicia said, but we need commitments, timelines, benchmarks, not we'll see. Walker nodded slowly. Then, let's start writing. 6 months later, the conference room looked different. Same beige walls, same humming projector, but the slide on the screen now bore both logos, DOJ and Atlanta Police Department. The title read, Implementation Update Consent Decree. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras ready. Community leaders sat near the front, pastors, neighborhood association heads, youth organizers, all holding copies of the decree summary. Alicia sat at the table, legal pad open, pen poised. Her Navy badge was still clipped to her lapel, but the red marks on her wrists were long gone, replaced by faint white lines only she noticed. Chief Walker stepped to the podium. In the last 6 months, she said, this department has begun a series of changes that frankly should have happened a long time ago. She listed them. Monthly public data reports posted online, a new civilian oversight board sworn in, revised stop policies, expanded training hours. She did not pretend everything was fixed. She spoke instead of first steps. Yesterday, she said, I sat in on a scenario-based training where officers had to decide whether to stop a car circling a block. They were given the exact facts of the incident that brought us here. Most did not make the same choices. In one of the front rows, Jason Chen listened, his academy training uniform replaced by a detective's tie and a badge at his belt. Not in homicide, not in narcotics, but in a small, growing unit focused on integrity and accountability. Internal Review, they'd named it, because internal affairs was poison now. Next to him sat Doyle. He was out of uniform. The consent decree hadn't forced Walker to fire him. It had instead created something more complicated. Under its terms, officers whose patterns matched certain criteria were given a narrow path: intensive retraining, demotion, strict supervision, and mandatory participation in reform efforts, or termination. Doyle had chosen the narrow path. His swagger was gone. In its place was a quiet, raw discomfort that followed him like a shadow. Today he was there because the decree required officers involved in the root case incident to hear the interim report. He glanced at Alicia once, then back at his hands. When he had testified in federal court about his past conduct as part of the decree's enforcement, his voice had cracked on the sentence. I saw what I wanted to see, not what was in front of me. The judge had let the silence sit for a long time. At the front of the room, the Civilian Oversight Board chairwoman, an older black woman named Ruth Hayes, stepped up. Her gray curls framed a face lined by decades of community work. We've already reviewed 12 complaints under the new authority, she said. We've sustained 4. That's 4 families who didn't have to shout into a void. 4 cases where officers were disciplined before the pattern became a headline. She smiled wryly. And trust me, we've told the DOJ when we think they're being too generous to this department. The room chuckled. Alicia felt something loosen in her chest. It wasn't joy. It wasn't victory. It was more like the first deep breath after months of shallow ones. After the briefing, she slipped outside for air. Atlanta's heat wrapped around her like a damp blanket, but at least it was honest. On the street, a patrol car idled at the curb. 2 young officers stood beside it talking to a man in a faded mechanic's uniform. His truck was double parked, hood up, hazard lights blinking. Sir, we can't let you block the lane all morning, one of the officers said. But if you want, we can help push you into that lot until the tow gets here. The mechanic wiped his hands on a rag. Appreciate it, man. Didn't think y'all did that kind of thing? The officer shrugged, grinning. New policy. We're required to perform at least 1 act of basic human decency per shift. His partner snorted. That's not in the manual. Should be, he said. They all laughed. Alicia watched from under the shade of a tree as they leaned into the truck's fender and pushed. It was a small thing, a nothing thing, a thing that didn't erase the night she'd spent on a bench or the hurt carved into communities for years. But it was real. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chen. Training session at 2. You coming? She typed back, wouldn't miss it. He'd asked her to co-teach a module for new recruits. When you're the story, not just the officer in it. He wanted them to see the video, to hear her describe exactly how it felt to be on the hood, wrists burning, knowing the law better than the man with the badge. You willing to do that? He'd asked the first time, eyes searching hers. Relive it like that? On purpose? She'd thought about all the lectures she'd given in law schools and conferences, all the panels and op-eds, all the cases where plaintiffs' stories got truncated to fit into briefs. If I don't, she'd said, then it's just trauma. If I do, maybe it's a tool. Now, as the patrol car pulled away and the mechanic waved, she checked her watch. Enough time for coffee before the next round. As she walked toward the corner cafe, someone in a passing car honked. "Hey!" a voice shouted. "You that DOJ lady, ain't you? The one from the video?" Alicia stiffened, then turned. A young woman leaned out the passenger window, phone in hand. "That was messed up what they did to you," the woman called. "But what you did to them after?" "That was something," Alicia managed to smile. "What we did," she said, nodding toward the headquarters behind her, "takes more than one person to move a system." The light changed. The car rolled on. Inside the cafe, baristas called out orders over the hiss of steam. A TV mounted in the corner played local news on mute, captions scrolling across the bottom. A segment teased, "Coming up, how federal oversight is changing Atlanta policing, successes and setbacks." She ordered a black coffee, no room, and took it to a small table by the window. Outside, the headquarters glinted in the sun. The scrapes on her car door from that night had never been buffed out. Every time she walked past the Prius in the hotel garage, they caught her eye. Evidence, she reminded herself. Not of her weakness, but of the exact point where denial had crashed into reality. She opened her notebook and wrote 3 words at the top of a fresh page. Document. Remember. Teach. Somewhere, someone was being stopped right now for reasons that would never show up in a report. Somewhere, a young officer was making a choice between habit and conscience. Somewhere, another city's numbers were turning red on a spreadsheet, and another investigation was beginning. This story wasn't over. It might never be. But in one city, on one block, on one humid southern afternoon, there were slightly better odds that the next black woman in an ordinary car would make it home without becoming a case study. And that, Alicia thought, sipping her coffee, was a start. Because accountability is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a different one where power learns, systems bend, and the people who were once only statistics get to be something richer, whole, heard, and finally cautiously hopeful.